Okay, so what are we talking about? Because we're talking a lot about. Yeah.
So it's this.
Go ahead.
Me go? You go? Okay.
Me go.
I go. Me go. So, okay.
Hello. Welcome to Inner Archeology.
We're so glad you're tuning in.
Oh, man. I love your little welcome voice. It's like 5 octaves higher than your normal
That's
voice.
how I answer the phone, too, sometimes.
It's also sometimes how you talk to your girls.
It's how I talk to my girls. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's my mama voice, I guess.
It's your mama voice. Welcome, children. Gather round.
You're safe. You're safe here with us.
Oh, man. Let's just jump right into it.
Yeah, I really like this idea that we're unpacking. And I think it's like worth saying that I don't know, like sometimes we try to unpack things and we talk about things that we're like actively like, it's not that we have like answers around, like we're just going through it and pondering it like in real time. And I think that's like brave and good and makes it feel like we're real people that have like struggles and that are trying to figure it out on their own. And, you know, because that's really important.
I think though, and for me, that's the kind of conversations I like to hear rather than like sometimes it's fun to have like an expert come tell you what's up. Like, you know, Daddy Huberman. Always love to hear what he has to say.
Definitely.
But it's a very different vibe, right? Like for me, I kind of like to be along for the journey with people. And that's like, I don't know, that's the people who, you know, share stories that are more messy and stuff like that. And I think that we both gravitate towards that. So again, like our last episode, which was very much an exploration, and I'm having realizations like from that conversation where I'm like, oh wow, I am being overly responsible in other areas of my life. And this, what we want to talk about today is still, we're working on it. Yeah. It's all work in progress.
In progress.
Massive caveat.
I don't know. And I think I hope it makes people feel like, if they can gives you permission. Like it's okay. I can have a voice and still be like fucking messy. And like both of those can happen at the same time, you know? And I think, giving yourself permission. And the hope is that people will be like, oh, like, they can do it. I can do it. Like, you know?
And that's one of the things I love about conversations like this as well, is I think that there's a general shift happening generationally from needing to be an expert on something before you say anything. You know, like our parents very much had the, like, you have to go to college and have like 10 years of experience and a PhD before you're an expert in anything. Yeah. Right. To kind of moving into more of a realistic light of, you know, acknowledging our limitations of knowledge and experience and kind of really just finding the people in this world that like resonate with you. And sometimes they're only like 2 steps ahead of you. They're not like 10 years ahead of you, because that creates a gap that makes them harder to relate to, quite frankly.
Yes,
you know?
Totally. And I think that the place, kind of the idea that there is value in the journey, that the value isn't at the end, at the expert point. And of course, like, you know, you need to be real with yourself too. Like if I'm walking around pretending I'm a doctor and giving advice, like, and I'm not, that's harmful, you know? But if I'm like, I'm like real and honest, like this is a work in progress and I'm learning, this is what I'm learning. This seems to be working. I tried this, it didn't work. I think there's so much value in that, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So what are we talking about? Because we're talking a lot about. Yeah. So
it's this.
Go ahead.
Me go? You go? Okay.
Me go.
I go. Me go. So, okay. We were chatting on the phone the other night and I was like expressing how there's this very perplexing thing that I've observed in myself, I've observed in others, but it's when you're aware of something that isn't maybe good for you and isn't like actually working. But the awareness is very subtle. It's not like a full blown, I think, in your conscious awareness, but you're just like aware that like things aren't going great, you know? And there are certain things that aren't working, but then you subconsciously start to defend those things and give reasons for, even just to yourself, like give reasons for why they are valid and why they have to be there, and there has to be another answer, you know. And I think that defense very much is rooted in our beliefs about said thing and the purpose that it's serving in our life.
And it's interesting because I've done this, you've done this, and I've definitely seen it in people where you can even get to the place where you're like, this is a thing I want to change about myself. And then like in that same conversation, you're like just same breath, just completely defending it and not fully seeing how you're defending it and like how you're like a massive contradiction. But I actually think that this is like, it's like the crux. It's like, this is the place where you make the choice of either continuing down the path of like actually actively making change and pushing back on those beliefs and seeing the contradiction in what you're saying and doing, or it's the place where you just get stuck. Like it's such an important like deciding point, I think, for so many people. And I think a big part of it is having someone in your life who you feel safe with, but you also respect, to like help you see that, because that is what has helped me in these examples. So I don't know, do you want to share mine, or should I share mine? Or I have a few. I got a lot.
I think we both have a lot.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm curious if this is like an ancillary thought, but I'm curious if this kind of is a step that happens when you're making change. It's just part of it, where you are starting to like really get clear on, this is where I want to be. This is holding me back. But I don't know how to shift yet. And it's almost like you're having this battle in your mind, which was why the contradictions make so much sense, where you're like wanting to let go of something, but it's familiar and comfortable, and change feels scary. So you're wanting to defend the thing that you know you need to let go of. And it keeps you in this like loop until you, like you said, you break out of it or you stay stuck.
It's making me want to add to the mastermind workbook a question of like, how, in what ways do you think you defend these beliefs?
I wonder
because
how
it's
that
not
question
something
would
that's
land.
often
like,
I don't think that you could answer it in the moment. I think it would be like ponder. It's more like a ponder this for the next
think
week
about.
Or so.
Yes.
Think about how you perhaps defend these beliefs, even though they're contradictory. Because that is like a huge thing. Is like when you, okay, well, let's give these some examples, because I always think examples like help. For me, a big one was shifting to abundance from scarcity, and how I wanted to live more abundantly, especially like, I mean, I'm talking, you know, when I was like in debt and like could barely pay my rent and bills, and was like so stressed about all of that. And then also wanting to like have a positive like impact on the world, but like could barely take care of myself. In fact, I was not taking care of myself. And I just remember having this conversation with a friend of mine where he was kind of gently pointing out to me how the desires for my future were in such contradiction with my like belief system, and then how I was defending it. So I was just like, because basically I had this whole story about how, you know, being financially stable and successful meant that you were greedy and that you were taking from people and that you were inherently a bad person. Meanwhile, I like couldn't like pay my bills and was like such a mess, and that for some reason felt like really virtuous, and like I was a better person. And he was just like asking me questions like, and don't you think you would have a bigger impact if you weren't surviving like day to day? Don't you think that you'd be able to like actually care for the people in your life if you could like weren't worrying about like buying groceries? And like obviously these answers are yes, but I was just like, it's just such a hard one. And it was such a moment of like, again, somebody who I respected, somebody who I felt pretty safe with, being like, what you're saying makes no sense. Like and so I don't know. That's one. We can do more.
Right. And I think I think like uncovering, it's that whole thing is like uncovering the incongruency that's there. And I
Mm-hmm.
think when you have that, like you have this ideal you or whatever, like what you're wanting to do in the world, and then there's this inherent frustration when you're like, I can't, how do I get from here to there? Like, why am I not there already? Like, it's not for lack of effort or for lack of want or for lack of like desire. It's like, and it's, you know, and this is the thematic thing that we talk about, our beliefs that hold us back. But breaking
Mm-hmm.
through that defending bit and recognizing where you're contradicting yourself and like reorienting, there's something really relieving about that. It's almost like a chiropractic adjustment where you're like, oh my God, now my beliefs are in alignment with like my values, and like things feel so much better in my subconscious, you
Yeah.
know?
It's
um
so true.
and
It's so
that
true.
is not anything I ever was like, literally this is just stuff that we've like stumbled upon in our conversations, is
Mm-hmm.
recognizing this specific bit when your beliefs are not in alignment with your values or the life that you want to create. Therein is probably, that's where all of your biggest frustrations with yourself lie, in there, where that
Mm-hmm.
incongruency is happening and you're out of alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been times for me that I've experienced like pretty quickly, I've experienced relief. Like I was easily able to like make that shift. For instance, like when I realized that how I treat myself in my own head, like how I parent myself, was not in alignment with my parenting values and how I actually parent my children. When I had that realization, it was such a quick, easy shift. I had nothing to
Mm-hmm.
defend. I really did not, I was not able to defend in the face of that argument how I was so hard on myself and how I
Mm-hmm.
treated myself. And so the shift happened really quickly. There's some habitual things I think that are lingering, but the shift into treating myself with the same compassion and patience and love that I treat my children, that happened quick. But then there's things, and this is kind of what we're talking about, where the argument isn't like, maybe the belief is so rooted, but there's all this like these layers of where you're like defending, you're
Mm-hmm.
defending your dysfunction, even though you're starting to see, oh, this is out of alignment. um
Mm-hmm.
and one that's coming to mind that I recently was just really addressing with you, you know, recently in the last few months, I have taken on a lot more work than really I've probably ever really done, like in like the scheme of like hours invested in a week. And I remember I had some bubbles with you of like, I was kind of like defending almost like my own inability to do what I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
do. And I remember you were so you were so sweet to me. There were times you were like firm, which felt really good and I needed, and times you were super, super
I
sweet.
was like, you remember me being sweet? Because I remember me being like,
Well,
you fucking got this.
this is usually how it goes. You come out with like something really strong, and then you remember, oh my gosh, I'm talking to Emily, and then you like loop back with something really sweet.
It's so
And you kind
true.
of sandwich it a little bit. But I know where that's coming from. But I remember you were like, you were just saying to me, look, I know that this probably feels really new, and it makes sense that, you know, you might be like, oh my gosh, how am I going to juggle all of this all of a sudden on top of all the other stuff? And but you were like, you got this. I know you got this. And if you don't believe in yourself, believe in me, and then I'm not fucking with you, I'm not lying with you. And I was like, okay. You know, and I did it. And I do have, sometimes I have like that'll pop back up, like you, whether it's like you don't have enough time, you don't have enough energy, something like that, where it keeps popping back up. And then what I do is I remind myself, this is a good bit, is like, I have proof that I can do it though, you know? And I look
Mm-hmm.
back, like, and you kind of can talk to this limiting belief, like, I know you're here and I know you think you're the only option, but I actually have proof to the contrary, that I've already done this. Like, I've already done it
Mm-hmm.
in other, maybe it looked a little different, but in other areas of my life, I have like done more than I thought I
Mm-hmm.
was really able to do in that time. So that's one
Mm-hmm.
that comes to mind that I've really addressed in the last few months.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. It's funny because when we were trying to come up with examples, it was so much easier for us to come up with examples for each other, which I find really interesting and important because I think that comes from just the importance of other people to be like mirrors for us and to help us like
Yes.
see these blind spots, because that's what they
Mhm.
are, I think, is like these are just
Mhm.
like blind spots. um and I don't know, so I think that's like a place where it's been really helpful to like have you in my life with these things, because at the end of the day I like trust you, I trust that you have my
Mhm.
best interest in your heart. um and that's just like so 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 important. And I think if you don't have this like yet established within a relationship, because I actually think it's really nuanced, one of the best ways you can do that is to actually like ask permission before you like try to like show somebody a blind spot, which took
Mm,
me a long
mhm.
time to learn, because I used to just be real intense and hard, especially like on the people I love most. It's like the
Mm.
people I loved most, I held to like a higher standard, and also I
Mhm.
saw like the highest version of them. And so I would just be like, no, like get it
Yeah.
together.
Just not accepting
like
anything other than that. Yeah.
it's like it sounded like it didn't come from a place of compassion, but it was like actually coming from like the place of like the most
Yeah.
compassion, but it was just like a
Totally.
weird like tough love thing that
Mhm.
I really came to realize like wasn't helpful. And so asking permission is like something I do. I don't really do it with you, but I do it with other people in my life, because I don't know. I think that's the way that you let people, when you ask somebody permission to like show them a blind spot, or like are you open to maybe hearing some of my thoughts around like what I'm noticing right now,
Mm.
as in I see you like really defending this thing that you're like also want to change, and it's like kind of like not in alignment and contradictory. You get them to like let down their wall a little bit,
Totally.
and have a choice in it, like, and consent to it. And it's actually
Absolutely.
super super powerful. Do you want to talk about the one that you had for me though? Because we are coming up for them. Because I
Yeah, and
actually want
this
to hear
one
you speak to it. Because I'm like, wait,
uh-huh.
what? What are you talking about?
This one was so interesting, and I think this is another indicator of when there is one of these like crunchy spots that are not in alignment. Is it is like a loop and a pattern. Like you'll hear or see like repeating things in somebody, and I loved how you kind of captured that whole we need other people because they can like pull back and see like you can kind because I can like look at your life and our friendship and I see more of like a pattern of what you're experiencing and things that have replayed itself
Mm-hmm.
and loops you've had or whatever. And when you're in your fucking life and you're living it, it's like very, I don't know. I don't, like I rely on you for that perspective. Like that is
Mm.
like a part that I need in our friendship because there is like just a certain aspects of it, blind spots that I just can't see no matter how much I try to pull back, how much I try to observe myself. And so, yeah, everything you said is so valuable to have those people in your life. But yeah, the
Real
one
quick
with,
though, before you dive into this,
mm,
I want to say that like we've all experienced, like, I try to remember that I have blind spots, and that anytime, I don't know, anytime I've like ended a romantic relationship, or anytime this is one of the reasons I love to travel and come home, and I
mm,
gain that perspective, a little bit more
yes,
perspective on my life. I think we've all had experiences where you're like, how the fuck did I not see that clearly? And it's
mm,
so, I don't know. For me, I've had some really intense ones that have like seriously made me question my self perception, and it's like fucked with me in a big way. And usually I feel like it happens the most within relationships that like fall apart. And then you're like, how did
mm,
I not see all
who,
these red flags? Like, what am I,
yes,
like, an idiot? And it's just like that, those examples in my life are such strong reminders of my blind spots, and that surely I have them right now and I have no idea what they are. And so I think that that's, anyway, going
no, that's
into
such an
what you were going
interesting
to say,
thought.
but I just,
And I think it's kind of like and I get that whole like you have a mountaintop moment where you're like seeing it all and you're like, how did I not notice all this stuff? And then it's like in so close, like it's right on your face,
mm-hmm,
that you can't see it. And I think it's like so important to remember that we are capable of both of those perspectives. And sometimes we're
mm-hmm.
really close to something, and then sometimes we get that like hindsight's 2020 mountaintop view. and
Yes.
and maybe
Yes.
it's less of like it's like the less of like this separate thing like one is better than the other, but it's more just like maybe like that's how seasons happen of life and ebbs and flows. But
Mm-hmm.
the one with you that we're referring to is one that I picked up through a pattern. It was like a loop of like things getting kicked up for you. And it was after a relationship had ended, and you were in a space, like you were protecting yourself. Your heart hurt, like you were protecting yourself. Mm-hmm. and it was bigger than like a heart hurt from that current situation. It was more of like an existential, like, love is not real thing.
Yep.
Like, yeah. And so, and I remember there was just this like story that you defended your position, and you were like, look at all this evidence that I have. Right. And you would like go down the list of things. And I remember just being like, Sarah, it makes so much sense you feel this way right now. And yeah, I'm pretty sure you're not going to always feel this way, but it's okay to feel this way. And like, let's feel this way. And I remember you like, and it was just so sweet because when Ben, made his debut into your life, mm-hmm. This was the part of you that you were like wrestling with. And it was like, no, but I have this part of me that's like pretty for sure that like this doesn't work for me in this lifetime, and yeah. And it was this part of you that had, and I think it was so beautiful that you it kind of was like convinced to come over to this side and to begin trusting this and allowing it to happen. And then it kind of like came back into alignment of really, and there were deep layers in that. Like, and I don't want to peel all of them back, but there were just like really deep layers of like, like worthiness and like feeling deserving of like all the love and affection and beautiful things. And it went down really deep, and it was so powerful. And I think it like, when this part came like into alignment for you, it like it was like you like up leveled in some ways. It was just this like really kind of rapid growth.
I don't think it fully like happened until even after we got married.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were so many layers of it that I was just like,
there were layers. Even like,
yeah, it was wild. No, you're 100% right. It's funny because I mean, like, we often joke about how when I would call you and I was like dating Ben, I would call you and be like, I'm not dating this guy. He's not, like, it's nothing. But
you would always apologize. You would apologize before you talked about him. You're like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just have to, just one thing. I just have to say one thing about this guy, and then I'm not going to talk about him anymore.
Because I was just trying so hard.
You were.
To like, I think there was like a meme. It was like, I don't remember, but it was like, oh, maybe it was like Aries falling in love, and it was like some kid like going down a slide, like looking like sheer terror.
And like gripping the sides. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and you were like, this is you. I was like, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it just like, it made so much sense.
It was so true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That you had this story. And how many times do we do, like, we create these stories and then we kind of adhere our like identity to it or in some ways. And then it's like, we defend the story, even though it's not like really serving us. And yeah.
And the thing is the stories around that I had around love and relationships and marriage, I mean, they made me feel safe ultimately. You know what I mean? And so it was like, I don't know. I didn't want to feel vulnerable. And that's why also being pregnant has been like a whole nother layer of like, fuck. Cause it's like a whole nother layer of reliance on a human that I just really was trying to avoid for the rest of my life. That was my plan.
Yeah, definitely. I remember that plan.
So yeah, it happened. It was like, yeah, it was like every layer with Ben, dating him, and then like, getting engaged. I was like,
yeah,
getting married, just
wedding.
Like so having a wedding, like so much like grappling with all of that every step of the way. It's very funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So many layers. And it's interesting. I like that you bring up the point that like these stories that you were telling yourself were trying to protect you. Like, it's not like,
for sure.
It's the whole idea of like no bad parts. Yeah. They protect you from pain. And we have like, we have that, so that is so like well ingrained into just our survival mind, right? It's like we've got to like mitigate risk and like, you know, avoid anything that it resembles or could be connected to something that caused us pain in the past. And in that, when we let that part of us drive, like when we let that part have control over our lives, we like limit ourselves from experiencing so much joy, and also potentially experiencing pain again, you know? And then it's like kind of the idea of, I don't know.
It also, in other ways, specifically with this example, it prevented me from seeing Ben clearly for a while. Like he would say things where he was just like, you know, like, this isn't fair and you're not like seeing me clearly. I remember so many, like a couple of times he would say to me like directly, I don't know where that story came from, but it did not come from me or our relationship. And I was just like, damn. You're that's truth. But I like didn't realize it till he like laid it out that like that clearly, right? And I just gotta say also in part, like there's so much about like Ben. I don't know, we were so like just supposed to meet, I feel like, because there's so much about him and how he is as a person that like helped all of this. Do you know what I mean? Like it was like, I don't know.
I mean, I really
It's
think
like
he was like the person to help, like, and he's like, you both have grown so much, but that, I mean, in the bigger, like the bigger cosmic picture, if you're thinking things are meaningful, I just feel like you were, in your life, you were ready to like unfold and address these beliefs that no longer were serving you, and you were given opportunities to grow. And I think that's what the universe does for us. I think the universe gives us opportunities to grow constantly, but a lot of times what you're experiencing first when you brush up against whatever person or opportunity is like all that old conditioning, you know? And so a lot of times we're just like, fuck that, I'm not doing that. And what you did was like, you leaned into like, okay. Eventually, after a lot of kicking and screaming, you leaned
after
in.
a lot of kicking and screaming. Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
Yeah.
It's funny because when I tell people things like that, how I was like so resistant to Ben, people think it's because of Ben. And I'm like, oh no. It was like all my shit.
It was your
like,
stories. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, it was me just being like, no. So yeah. No, that was a big one. And I don't know. I still feel like there's layers that are being discovered all the time. It's definitely, I think a big shift happened when we got married. That was like a last layer for me, for sure.
And then now it's like pregnancy and being parents, and that's a whole other journey for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's good. I think it's really reinforced in me. I believe that there is an overemphasis in the world today on like self-reliance and independence, and you know there's like a lot of like, yeah, you should be like single by yourself and like love yourself, and like I do believe those things, but I think it's like in some ways been taken to a degree, at least I've met people where I'm like, I think you took this a little too far to where they forget that we are like relationship creatures. And I have always grown the most through my relationships and through, and not just like, I mean, friendships, family, like romantic relationships. Cause I really believe that's where you like learn the most, because I don't know. We all have people who have done the like extreme version of that, and it's just like living in your own head, and that I don't know. That's just like, that's not where most of my like growth happens. It's always through like grappling with a thing,
the connection,
and another person. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, brushing up against somebody else. And this is just like the most human thing, is that we recognize something, and it could even be like this movement thing that you're talking about, this shift. This is like a collective, like societal like thing, especially for women, like because we're coming from this other extreme of like
right
uber dependency, and now so it makes so much sense that there's this kind of collective
like
swing And then the idea is eventually you go back to the middle and you have like healthy relationships and stuff like that.
Healthy attachment.
Exactly. And I think that pendulation, it's so interesting to see those like thematic things that are just kind of happening like for like an entire group of people, you know, and that's definitely one that a lot of people I think are experiencing for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I don't know, do you want to talk about yours? Because it was funny how we were like, oh, I can think about yours, but I can't think about my own. I still think that's hilarious.
Tell me about mine.
Because I like yours. Yours is like super cute and like lighthearted. And I think it's because you have this image of yourself, which I totally like help perpetuate for sure, of being like, and we talk about it on the podcast all the time, of being like light and airy and sometimes even like aloof. Like I think that's something you've been kind of told that you are. And I think it all plays into this like image of you internally where, I don't know, like I can't say the number of times where you like tell me that like your favorite day of like eating would just be like fruit. And I'm like, I would actually die. And then when I come to visit you, you have to like, you buy me like a rotisserie chicken because you're like,
here, meat.
I'm like, is this, what are we having for lunch? And you're like, this bowl of watermelon. And I'm like, no, that's not food.
I don't survive this.
I cannot do this. And so it's like this whole like image, right? This whole like idea. And then also when you're having a hard time, you tend to like eat less than the little bit that you already eat. And this isn't like an eating problem. It's just like you like to feel light. Right. And then you have these days where you'll like eat protein and you'll work out and you'll be like, I feel so good. But you also tell me that you feel the best when you like are eating fruit and reading books and like drinking tea. But then you have these days, these moments, because this is so much more who I am. So obviously I'm like, more protein, more working out, lift heavy things, listen to Ash Nico, angry feminist music. And so, but when you do it, you're like, I feel great. And I'm like, yeah, when does that get incorporated into the story of like who you are? And this is, I don't know, this is something that because of in the past, I used to like hammer into my own beliefs and like, oh, this is what will fix you. I don't, at least I think I don't do that with you with this like particular thing that I see in you. So when you do those things, I'm like, yay! I just try to be like a cheerleader. I'm like, I'm like, yay, protein, yay, working out. Doesn't that feel so good? Don't you want to do it more? But like, honestly, in my mind, I want you to do it more than you do. Because I feel like it's so good for you, but it's definitely like different than the story you have for yourself about like what makes you feel good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway.
And this is definitely like one of those things that this is a work in progress because this is one that I haven't grounded myself in. And I really think that this is a manifestation of like some coping for me too. Because on one hand, yes, there's like this whole like identity bit and like just wanting to feel a certain way in my body, which is like to feel like I don't have a body. And I think that this is all just like, I really do think this is all just like very residual, like disassociation, coping, where I just I'm not comfortable in my body and I don't feel safe in my body. And it feels like really scary. And so if I can kind of disconnect from my body as much as possible, and eating like a big meal makes me feel really connected to my body. And so then I interpret that as like, it doesn't feel good, actually. Like I don't feel good. And so, but I have found like when there has been windows where it like being grounded like that, like those days that I call you, like celebrate, I like send you a picture, like on the rare occasion I like make myself breakfast, I'll like send you a picture of it. I'll be like, look at it, look what I did. And
eggs.
Like, protein and good stuff that my body needs. And and it does feel good because I think like I am creating a life and an environment in which it is safe for me to be in my body, you know? But that's like, this is like an old, I feel like this is like a really, and these are like kind of new thoughts I'm putting together right now, but like, I think this is like a lot of really old coping mechanisms that like are stem all the way back from when I was a kid. And I think it's kind of like, it's safe for me to feel in my body is the thing. And working out and eating meals, like, is what puts me in my body. And so I avoid those things if I'm stressed, or if like things are happening that are freaking me out, or whatever. That's the first thing that goes is I do not eat. I you know, I have a hard time like moving my body because I disconnect. And I know this is a thing, and it is something that I'm working on. And I feel like the more I'm creating safety in my world and creating an environment that feels really good and safe, I think it's going to be easier for me to do that more, you know.
Hell
Is the hope.
Well, I mean, you also shared like a belief that I didn't know that you had about working out. Are you down to share that? You told me this last night and I was like, what the, how do I not know this?
It is one of those things where I was like, big one. This is fundamental. This is like root. Yeah, around working out when I was a child, how I observed exercise was as a form of punishment. In the women in my life, in my mother, like even in my aunt, like like just in like
wow,
that it was like
so huge.
Yeah, it's like I'm not unhappy with my body, and so it turns into this. And I think observing that anytime I would work out, I would it just felt bad because I felt like I was doing it from this perspective of punishment. And so I would like avoid doing it, or I would do stuff like dance or like things that were fun and that felt good. But the idea of like going to a gym and working out, like I equated that with like, I'm unhappy with my body and I'm punishing my body. Which doesn't help.
That's such a huge, I like, one, cannot believe I didn't know that. And two, yeah, that's just, I don't know. I hope you get to the other side of that one. Cause it's like, it's so hard for me to imagine because for me, it's so different, and working out is like so essential to my mental health and like my happiness. And it's like such a joy, and I feel so like amped and pumped and like in my body feels good and strong. And it's just like, I'm sad. Like, I'm sad that that's like this, what you witnessed. Fuck. It's so like, cause it's just, I don't know. I think I immediately like put myself in that, and it would like take away something that brings me like tremendous joy. Do you know what I mean? And so when you told me that, I was like, no, fuck.
I know. Cause I've definitely like observed like just what you've shared about like what that means for you. And I feel like a sense of like, I wish I had that. Like, I wish that's what the story was. And that's the thing is like, that's what I need to cultivate. And you know, when I do work out afterwards, I try to tell myself like, it's so wild, like what I have to do in my brain. Like when I'm working out, like I'll go to the gym, I'll like look at myself in the mirror and be like, my body is good, just like how it is. I'm not doing this to like change me or be to punish me or anything. But it's like this it's actually like more work in my brain, I feel like, than it is in my body when I work out, right? And so, and then afterwards, it's kind of like this level of like, doesn't this feel good? And I feel strong, and it's like an effort. It really is. But I do think that the combo.
I want to work out with you. Yeah, like. I don't know. We should try that. I don't know if it'll feel good for you, but we should try it. Yeah.
Maybe some of your stuff gets on me or something like that. But yeah, it's like the combo of that, like, I don't want to punish my body. I don't believe those things about my body. So why would I treat my body that way? And associating that with working out, with the addition of like just this whole story of like wanting to be disconnected from my body, that's a lot of ammo to like defend this behavior that isn't really serving me.
You're working against a lot in that particular area, like a lot. And man, just like the desire to want to push back on that, like that, I don't know, it's just like a lot to like try and like muster, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It is an effort. And know what's weird is like with, you know, because like I feed my children, right? And I have this, like, there's another weird thing that happens to me. I don't know what this is, and I'm sure, I hope I'm not alone in this, but I'll like feed my children, and somehow like I feel like that's enough. Like me feeding my children is enough. I don't actually need to feed myself. And I'll go like
Oh my gosh.
it's really weird. Like I remember this was like pretty recently. Like I remember I was sitting down and thinking, because I give them all this like nutritious like stuff so that they've got a balanced diet and all the things. And then I remember sitting down one day, like a few weeks ago, and thinking about what I actually ate that day. And I was just like, there's like this weird part of my brain that feels like, because I touched all these yummy veggies and fruit and things and good stuff for my girls. But I remember just having this moment of like, I didn't actually eat any of that stuff. All I ate was like a string cheese or something, you know? And I'm just like, so there's something there too. And maybe that's just like a busy mom thing that I just like all I ate was like the few bites of bagel that was left, but that definitely
Oh
like
my
happens.
gosh, that's so funny. And it's
You
funny
know
because
what?
when you come here, I like feed
Uh-huh.
you like 3 meals a
And
day, and
then
you're
my
always
little
like,
like fridge just like piles up with leftovers.
yeah, and you like can't even eat them. You're like you like don't even know what to do with all the
I
meals I'm
know.
like giving you. I'm like,
I
today it's
know.
lunchtime. Eat your whole bowl, like, and you're
It
like,
is so
okay.
funny. Just food piles up. It's so
And then I'll
amazing.
be like going to order like a dinner or get dinner for like 3 nights in, and you're like, I have so many leftovers.
I'm just going to eat some of the stuff that I have. I know.
And I'm just like, how? Like,
I know. I wonder if I'm
oh,
just
I love
having a
you.
thought right now. I'm having this thought. I wonder if it, like, when I make my girls' lunches, if I should just like also make a lunch for myself, like pack myself a little
What?
lunch
That's
box.
like a novel idea.
I'm like already doing it.
Just
Could pack
make a
myself some
third
carrot sticks and
serving.
yeah. Maybe that's what
Wait.
I need to do. Why did I
Oh
never
my
think about
gosh.
that till now?
Dude,
Oh,
I want it's funny because it's almost like I want this one more for you than you want it for yourself. I think
mm,
because you've kind of existed this way for so long and you're comfortable in it. And
mm,
so I don't know. I definitely see that. Like I want it more for you than I think you want
mm,
it for yourself. Again, just because for me, like working out, eating like hearty meals, like feels so good. Like for
mm-hmm.
me, when I've done like something really physical and I'm like so hungry and then just like eat a fat, like nutritious lunch, like those two things combined
It's just
is
like,
so satisfying and
yeah.
so good. And my body is just like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't know. And I like want
I
that for you.
I know. I think that like I really do think that I'm moving into again kind of what I said earlier, that I'm like really trying to curate my life to be something that I feel really safe in. And I'm really like, my
That makes
hope
sense.
is that I'm also going to like simultaneously be able to address some of these things. And not to say that like I'm trying not to like wait. Like I actually like I have like some of my things I'm trying to implement and trying to like practice doing this, but it's definitely like, yeah, it's a thing. But
Yeah. Well, we all have
yeah.
these things. It was very funny
Mhm.
to try and see it in ourselves and then in each other. So
Mhm.
thanks for being here while we kind of talk
Yeah.
about our weirdness.
I know.
And yeah, I'm sure I'll have a bunch of. The good thing is after these, I always have a little bit of a realization. Like later on, I'm like, oh yeah, I did this here too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Where you see it. And I think, I don't know, I
And
hope
when
that
you
we'll really
when you
like
come visit me next, I'm gonna like feed you, and we're gonna lift
give me
weights,
so much
and
food. I know. That'll be great.
if it's traumatizing, we'll stop. But we're gonna give it one
Mhm.
solid try.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be for me, like when I'm in my body, I just need to remind myself that like I'm safe. Like I'm safe in my body, you know? It's so
Yeah.
wild. But yeah, I hope this is like kind of painted a picture though of like how you can really be curious and explore like the origins of the stories and where am I defending that and does it work for me or not? And that
And
kind of
tools
thing,
for
you
like
know?
maybe helping other people doing it well for the people in your
Yes.
life, but also if you're gonna offer that up, you gotta like be receptive to it too, I think. I don't know.
Totally. Definitely.
And you want to be. Honestly, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you want to hear that from people.
Yes.
Or else why would you be listening to this?
Right. It is like a gift. Like whenever you give me that, or somebody like in my life is like, I see this thing that I trust, it's kind of like, thank you. Okay, I'll look at it, you know?
Yeah. And it's also because one thing that I like is that we don't always feel like I hope that you saw it even with me talking to you about like this food workout thing, is it's not about like getting them to move through it and like, or being like frustrated that they're not, because that's ultimately like not up to me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I think that like some of the stuff I'm going through with being pregnant, I'm like, I'm not there yet. Okay. Right now I'm frustrated with my body.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, I'll think it's cute later. And I was like, do I have to think that? And you were just like, no, you don't have to skip steps. You can be just like, ah. And I was like, thank you. Yes. I'm not there yet.
Totally. Yeah. The whole skipping steps, that's so important. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like, it's not up to you. I don't know. Cause for me, I used to get frustrated with people, right? When they would have these loops, but it's not up to you, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyway,
we're learning something.
Love you guys. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for tuning in.
And we will see you next week.
Bye.